Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome once again to another fabulous edition of the Greater Lawrence Chamber of Commerce Chamber Chat. I'm Brad Kloffenstein, president of the Greater Lawrence Chamber. Thank you for joining us. As I've told all of our guests that are here, we're recording this right now. Every week we do this, try to do it at 1:30 on Wednesdays. Anyone is welcome to join us live and ask questions of our guests, but then we record it, we'll publish it the next day, and it is available forever on our Facebook page and also our YouTube page. So this week, wanted to talk about commercial real estate. Obviously with COVID and people working from home and the stay-at-home orders, the world is going to look different 6 months from now, a year from now, and 10 years from now. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what it might look like and get some prognostications from people who are experts in the field. So we have Tim Kraft, who's with us. Jane, are you an expert or are you just here to tune in? I think just here to tune in.
Yeah, well, I used to work in commercial real estate finance and lending, but that's been a few years now. So I guess I was an expert, but obviously, yeah, the world's changing. So interested to hear what people are thinking and seeing.
Wonderful. Well, we'll start. Tim, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit. So you do commercial real estate for IU Health, right?
I do. So I was a broker in Central Indiana for about 16 years with Cressa Partners, then Trammell Crow Company, and CBRE, with a specialty in healthcare. And about 2.5 years ago, I left that work to manage the leasing for Healthcare Trust of America in the Midwest. So I managed about 5.5 million square feet of buildings in 11 markets for Healthcare Trust of America. And on March 9th, I started at IU Health as a transaction manager for IU Health, doing commercial real estate transactions and acquisitions.
What day did you start?
I started on March 9th. IU Health, when you become an employee, they send you to a day-long orientation about the IU Health way and how to get your benefits, et cetera. And at noon on March 9th, my new boss sent me a text that said, "I'm indefinitely closing the office. Come get your laptop." So I have never actually physically been in the same room as any of my coworkers. Started as a part of this COVID journey.
Very nice. So let me pick your brain. What is the world going to look like 6 months from now, a year from now, 10 years from now? And when I say that, obviously, I mean, density seems to be the enemy of COVID-19, or actually the friend of COVID-19, the enemy of the rest of us. Are people going to spread out? I mean, half of the downtown office workers haven't come back to work. Are we going to see a glut of office space? And in turn, retail seems to be shifting to online. Are we going to see a glut of retail space?
Well, I do believe that we are going to see a glut of office space. We all pivoted in March and April to this at-home work environment, and I think there are a lot of people who are going to stay at home. I have worked with an architecture firm and an engineering firm that each occupied between 15 and 20,000 square feet in Central Indiana, and neither thinks that their footprint will be more than 10,000 square feet within the next 2 years. So you've got a lease obligation depending on your footprint, and now it's the obligation of that occupier, that tenant, to get out of their lease obligation if they don't need as much space. And so I think we're going to have a glut of office space. I don't feel comfortable speaking for IU Health on this call, but I know that our return to work at IU Health is not looking like everybody's going to be back in their office. I don't anticipate ever actually having office at IU Health.
Okay.
And then on the healthcare front, which is what my expertise is, prior to March 1st, 2020, if you were looking at clinical space, between 15 and 25% of your clinical space was living room. And tomorrow, waiting rooms are a thing of the past. Almost all of our clinic providers are no longer utilizing waiting rooms, and we're using apps or just a cell phone call and waiting in your car to come in. So as we design clinical space for the medical world in the future, it is without a waiting room.
So what happens to all that space? Does it get converted? Does it become residential? Does it get demolished? Is it blighted? Do the prices come down?
So I believe some prices are going to have to come down, and that's just supply and demand economics of pricing of commercial real estate, because it's always been commercial real estate is 100% based on supply and demand economics. So prices are going to come down, and creative reuse projects are going to be the theme of the day. That's not an expertise of mine. I manage transactions for users, and we're going to have fewer transactions because of less of a need for office space. I would imagine that medical office space is going to be at a premium continuing forward as we look at the end of COVID and what other health concerns outlast the use of a new medicine. And so some Class A office or Class B office, if they've got the availability for more water for exam rooms, will more than likely become medical office space.
Wow. So Dan Drexler has a question here. It says, do you see a difference between rural, suburban, and downtown commercial space?
So pre-March 1st, 2020, obviously there was a great difference between each of those. And the most basic of which was parking, right? Downtown office space, you've got to account for your parking. And rural and suburban, you often have buildings that have three sides, parking lots, and free parking. There's going to be less of a need to be in a downtown environment in the future. And so I think rural and suburban office space is going to be the way of the future.
Okay. Adam, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and I'm going to bring you into this conversation. Because you have urban planning skills. So how does this affect how you lay out a community? Obviously, we've seen Carmel and Fishers try to create a downtown out of a space that never had a downtown before. How does this change those plans for developers?
We're definitely seeing a lot more mixed use. So what you would see more multi-story buildings where you'd have a lot of business retail space on the main floor, and then more townhouse condos on the second, third floor. As Tim pointed out, the biggest thing tends to be parking. And so now there's becoming this shift of how parking structures are presented in such a fashion that don't make them look like parking structures. Nobody wants a parking garage in downtown. But if you build it up to where it looks like you have various retail space or multi-tenant space or multi-residential space around it and kind of envelopes around that system, it makes it a little bit more appealing.
So actually, where'd Tiffany go? She just
saw her in there.
Yeah, she was here. So I know that she does real estate up in Fishers. I was just going to get her opinion of the market. So Tim, I'm going to come back to you. What are you being told by your bosses as far as, are you guys looking to acquire, looking to sell, looking to redevelop? And I mean, you mentioned there's not going to be waiting rooms. I'm curious, Community East just rebuilt that entire campus. Is it suddenly obsolete before it's even done?
No, I don't believe so, but it's the build out's going to need to change, right? That campus that they've built out on Community East, those waiting rooms are obsolete. And that's been the name of the game in healthcare for a long time, that how you use your footprint is often changing. And you look at the announcements that IU Health has made about their growing campus downtown. All of those buildings are, and part of the announcement is it's modular. It's the ability to change the usage for healthcare quickly, and this is a major change that we're going to see everywhere. Office users throughout, and any sort of real estate users throughout, are still in a wait and see mentality. Pricing has not dropped dramatically in this 9 months, but much fewer deals have gotten done in the last 9 months because I think people are anticipating that pricing is going to go down.
So I kind of forgot that that you guys had that big acquisition where you're taking over where McFarland Foods was, and really everything south of your campus all the way to I-65. Were all those acquisitions complete before this hit, or does this change things?
Not something I'm at liberty to talk a whole lot about. Yeah.
Okay. Never mind. But obviously it alters those plans moving forward.
Absolutely. All plans are up for rediscussion as of March 9th when Tim Kraft came on board, right?
Well, you're really changing things up. Well, let's take this as an opportunity. Does anybody who's here in attendance have questions for Tim or anyone else who's here? This is kind of a free-flowing discussion because Tiffany, I know, has some expertise in this area. So does Kate. Kate, especially in housing real estate. So if anyone, Dan has.
Yeah, I'm curious about the mixed use developments and maybe between the commercial and the residential real estate. Do you see that being an option, a more attractive option moving forward?
Well, I'm going to answer that, and that may even segue into a question for our residential person. Personally, as somebody who's now working in a basement and for the foreseeable future is going to be working in a basement, I know that my family needs more space than we needed on March 9th. Stay-at-home orders have come and gone and may come again. Mixed use makes a lot of sense during a stay-at-home order because you're living in a place that has more than just residential space. And I know that we've got a residential realtor on the line, and it'd be interesting to hear how he's seeing requirements changing for residents since March.
What we're seeing nationally is that a lot of people are moving from downtowns to the suburbs. A lot of people are moving from the East and West Coast and from Chicago because of property taxes. Basically just less expensive to live in Indiana. That's what I'm hearing. I try to be like hyper local. So what I've heard about the downtown market as far as residential goes is they've had less sales. I don't want to make it sound like everybody's running for the hills from downtown or anything like that, but that's just what I've heard from other people. And we've had a booming market this year despite everything that's gone on. And I don't know, I see a lot of people moving to the suburbs, rural areas. At least once a week I talk to somebody that wants 3 acres, a home with a basement. So I mean, that's going to be in high demand right now. That was in high demand before this year. So going forward, I mean, I think a lot of people are going to be moving to the suburbs, rural areas, and unfortunately out of the downtown areas. I love downtown, and I hope everybody doesn't move from there. But I mean, if you don't really have to be near there, like for your job, then you might be moving to suburban or the suburbs for the school district and things like that.
So, Tiffany, can I ask you? You've got Fishers, or you work Fishers. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I agree with everything that he said. When we get down to another layer of specificity, one of the things that I hear a lot of is that my house is too big. where you'll have like empty nesters who've been home, just the two of them, and they're like, oh my God, this is just so big. And then some people will really say that their homes are too small. And the big trend now is having some of that flex space, that full basement, that finished basement, a loft upstairs that, where the kids can play. And then, to be honest, we do see some inventory coming onto the market because people are spending time at home with their spouse, and they're realizing that it's not really a great situation. So we've got inventory coming from people upsizing, downsizing, and changing the dynamics of their family. The other thing that is interesting is, as like Salesforce and Lilly have attracted the executives here who make a little bit more money. They're in like those $500,000 houses downtown, those places where they took them down to the studs and rebuilt. What we're finding is that the idea of working remote often means that these people can work from Indy or San Francisco or New York City. So we are seeing some inventory come on the market where some of those higher end wage earners are moving. So that concerns me more than anything, because some of the areas that have been developed, if we lose some of those higher end wage earners, that's going to have just a different effect on some of the property values and being able to, resell those homes in the market. I just think it's very, very interesting. I think being at home for a long time really challenges, how useful our homes are. And definitely people still have the time, the opportunity, and the financial resources right now to make changes. And I would also say that if anybody who is thinking about building a home right now, the biggest trend right now is everybody wants a full bathroom on the main floor and maybe an office, just so they can have that flexibility as they age or somebody comes to visit or if grandma comes. That's one of the things. There are a lot of great homes out there, but people will say, wow, I really wish there was a main floor bathroom, a full bathroom on the main, or some type of bedroom on the main floor. So if I were building tomorrow, those are the two things that I would put in any home.
Okay. So let me ask really all three of you. Obviously, Kate had mentioned that there's a lot of people that are wanting to downsize. On the flip side of that, are there people who say, I'm going to be working from home, maybe my employer is going to start giving me a home office stipend? How many people are, like you say, wanting somewhat of a dedicated space, but potentially bigger space, just so that they can spread out? Yeah, Tim exactly is going to be one. And I mean, it's, if you've got a 2-bedroom house or 3-bedroom house, and suddenly you need one that's going to be office space, that might be a reason to suddenly go to a 4 or 5-bedroom. Or
that's kind of a marketing tool that you have whenever you have a listing, is you want to promote that you have space for an office. And I think there's a lot of demand for that for obvious reasons right now.
Mm-hmm.
And also a dedicated space for like homeschooling, a flex space like that. That's one of those things that the kitchen table can do but so much. And especially that upstairs loft is the alternative to a basement. So, there's just ways that people can fit things into their price ranges, but also meet their needs.
Personally, prior to March, we were looking at a possible downsize. And once we had 5 people in the house for a period of time, it was whatever size we're in now, that's as small as it gets, because you needed a spot for each of those children to have their own area from time to time, and then each of the adults to have their area to work. And, we're blessed with a basement and a couple of rooms on the first floor that allow everybody to spread out. And I got to imagine everybody else is with those needs as well. There was a question that came into the chat about indicated 25% of employees were working from home at the peak of COVID, and that'll be down to 15 by 2025. What amazed me most about COVID is we all moved to working at home, but there really wasn't a technology change to allow that to happen. We had Teams, we had Zoom, we had all these programs already on our computers, but they were underutilized. And now we all know how to use it. Now we're all experts at it. And it's pretty easy and nice to be at home. So I think that there's a mentality change that it's cost effective to be at home, and it works. And if 25% was the peak of COVID, we're only looking at 15% 5 years from now. That tells me that the 15% that's not home from COVID anymore. We're not anticipating COVID lasting until 2025. It's people realize working from home works. And we're looking at, I know that there are office users that are looking at transforming office space into a print center, because everybody's working from home, but there is still a need for paper in our world. And the only time you go into the office is like a Kinko's pickup.
It's funny, my next door neighbor works at the finance center, and he runs a department. I think he's got 50 people or something that work for him. And he said that the notion in business always was you needed people to come into the office just to make sure that they're working and to keep productivity up. But they sent all their people home in March. And he said, remarkably, productivity actually went up, that they're running at about 103, 105% of goal. He said, typically we're running 96, 95%. So that, yeah, the old notion that you have to keep an eye on your employees, you know, especially with it's goal-based, that some of these people, I think, are going to find that, yeah, people can work remotely, and yeah, they're going to have to find alternative uses. And especially here at the Fort, that huge finance center, my God, that thing could be a white elephant if we're not careful.
I had an intern this summer who lived in Southern Indiana. Our whole relation was like this through a computer.
Mm-hmm. So have you ever met in person?
We met in person once so that I could hand him the computer. And it happened to be a property tour halfway down to Martinsville, which is, you know, halfway in between where I was and where he was.
Mm-hmm. So, Russ, you've got a question?
Yeah, just pertinent to on the residential side for someone who's looking to downsize in the next year or so from a 3,400 square foot facility. We're just two of us, my wife and I. Are there areas that are better values than other or undervalued from residential on the north side of Indianapolis and, let's say, southern Hamilton County or neighboring areas?
I'll say any inventory is good inventory right now. I think Tiffany would probably agree with that. We're pretty desperate for any home that can be on the market. No, I don't think there's any real bad areas in the north side of Indianapolis. I don't know, I'm kind of partial because I live on the north side of Indianapolis, and I joke with people that are on the south side, but north side of Indianapolis, Hamilton County area, I don't see any bad areas really. I mean, it's, you know, whatever people can afford. It probably has more to do with like the floor plan and things like that, I would say.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, Russ. It really depends on what you want. And especially for people who are looking to downsize, it's a wonderful opportunity to think about what you really want. Do you want just a ranch? Do you want a garden home? Do you want yard maintenance? Do you want to be in a walking community? Do you want to be close to a grocery store and a Starbucks? Because that's where some of those mixed use facilities come in, so that you can have, you know, kind of an urban kind of experience, but also be able to go downstairs, get a pastry, get a coffee, you know, go to a nice restaurant. So it really depends on exactly what you want. Of course, probably.
Oh yeah, it's a ranch here. I know that because my wife has bad knees.
Okay. So we'll have go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's so you're answering it though. This is good information to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, you just have to be thoughtful about it. Work with your agent so that they can figure out exactly what is best for you, because you don't want to waste time. Like Cade was saying, inventory goes really fast. And so if you can pinpoint to exactly what you're looking for, it just makes for a more pleasant experience. And then the other part of it is, even though people want to move, oftentimes they have to sell what they're currently living in. So when you become just more closer to taking action, make sure that you're doing things at home to prepare your house for sale. Decluttering, painting, neutralizing, stuff like that. That way, when the time is right, everything moves very smoothly for you.
All right, thank you.
Tiffany, I don't know what this Starbucks place is, but I know people who move to Lawrence want to be in walking distance to Porter's or Brickhouse Coffee. So
I'm sorry. I'm thinking like 2019 where everybody wanted to be near Starbucks. I'm stuck in the past.
Curiously, I tried to go to both Starbucks and McDonald's at 71st and Binford earlier today. Both of them have shut down their dining rooms, which, so they've taken that 25% and upped it just a little bit. So any other question? Dan Drexler has a question.
Hey, Brad, the last thing I wanted to say was I kind of tagging on to what Tim had mentioned with the remote work and kind of upsizing to include offices. The Small Business Development Center is partnered with Purdue University on a digital transformation series. It's a 3-part series that helps small businesses move toward cybersecurity, increased security, remote working, how to position your company. I put a link in the chat session there that you might want to share with your membership as well. But I think it ties in actually with your commercial real estate conversation. And if you do see clients, companies moving that direction, it's probably not a bad idea to plug them into a program like this where they can better understand how to secure their data exchanges remotely.
Great advice. So any other questions for our assembled panel while we have them here and they're available?
I wanted to ask Tim a question.
Yeah, go right ahead.
You remember after 9/11 how airports changed?
Absolutely.
And it just made me think about that when the question was asked about how like downtown's how downtown retail space would change in like more rural areas. And I just think that our small towns, they've already had to reinvent themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So once Walmart comes to town and the mom and pops close, and then our downtowns had to change in some of our rural areas. And I just wonder if this is going to be one of those inflection points for, like downtown in our major cities, how it'll be like, oh, that's how we lived pre-COVID.
And I think that rural areas are now going to have more of a permission to grow, because I can move out to the country right now and still do the same job I'm doing right now, living at 71st and Binford, because I needed to be 25 minutes away from downtown 9 months ago. But now it doesn't, I do maybe 2 or 3 property tours, 4 or 5 property tours a month. And I've got to get to somewhere in central Indiana to do those, or somewhere around Indiana. So I need to stay in this area. But I think this is a great opportunity for rural cities to get some of those high value, you talk about those $500,000 houses that Salesforce employees were buying in central Indiana. That can now go to a much more rural area, because they're most likely, this is the format that they're going to use for much of their work today. They don't have to be in a tower downtown.
So Tiffany and Cade, let me ask you before we wrap up, have you guys noticed a shift? Are people still buying the high-end homes, or are they a little bit more reluctant to go big?
Well, I'll just say that, it depends on the person, because the price point, like you have a lot of first-time buyers. There are people who are taking this as an opportunity because interest rates are low to get out of their apartments. So there's a lot of activity in the like 175 to 250 range for your first-time home buyers. And then there's activity where people are looking to upsize, kind of get into that second or that third house. We really need a house with a pool, or we really want to be in Carmel. We really want to be in other areas. Unfortunately, I will say that I do have a listing that's $500,000 that is sitting for just a little bit. So I think that a different socioeconomic points, people are just, watching the market, waiting for things to kind of shake out before they make some of those big moves. But Cade, what are you seeing?
Pretty much the same thing. Like, I think nationally, like the high end market is going down. Like homes just aren't increasing like they probably were. Like that's in like the East and West Coast. I think a lot of it has to do with the stock market. So whatever you're seeing the stock market do, like if people, I think in the spring, some people I knew were like lost a ton of money in the stock market. So they're not going to move. They're going to stay where they're at. And I don't think this, I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't know if the stock market's going to get that bad right now, but that's going to hold people up. And I'm like Tiffany, I've got like a $420,000 listing that has had 2 showings, and it's got a deeded boat dock. It's got a perfect floor plan for an empty nester. And I've had 2 showings, and I mean, it's just kind of blowing my mind, but I think that it's partly due to, people in that price range that, they're worried about what might happen. So if they have to sell in order to buy, and if they're worried about their hours being cut or their job being cut, they're not going to be making a move right now. So that's kind of what I'm seeing.
All right. Well, I promised everybody that we would get out of here within a half an hour or so. So I'm going to try to keep it to that. Thank you all, everyone, for showing up. I know that this was kind of loosey-goosey, but I really enjoyed doing this chamber chat. So thank you all for being here. Remember, next week, I've got Jamie Davidson from Financial Center who's going to talk about personal finance and budgeting. So share that with anybody you know who might benefit from that. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to meet Chris Cheater, who's the new state rep for this area in District 88. So we'll be talking to him. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for participating. As I said, this will be recorded and should be available starting tomorrow if you want to share it. So just watch the Greater Lawrence Chamber Facebook page and we'll post that shortly. So otherwise, everyone, have a great week.
Thanks, Brad.
Bye. Thank you.